When Jacob Thornfield saw the young nun feeding letters to the prairie wind like prayers to a godless sky, he knew she was running from something darker than the devil himself. The flames licked at the edges of the parchment, each piece catching fire before spiraling upward into the endless Montana sky. Jacob reined in his horse, watching from the ridge as the woman in black fed letter after letter to the makeshift fire she'd built among the sagebrush. Even from this distance, he could see her hands trembling. His 5-year-old daughter, Emma, shifted restlessly in the saddle behind him. "Papa, why's that lady burning things?" Jacob's jaw tightened. In 3 years of working this land, he'd learned to read trouble like weather patterns. The woman below wasn't just burning paper. She was erasing herself, piece by piece. "Stay quiet, little bird. Let's see what she's about." The nun, for that's what her habit proclaimed her to be, moved with the desperate efficiency of someone who'd made a terrible decision and was seeing it through. She'd chosen the old watering hole, probably thinking herself hidden from the world. But Jacob knew every stone and shadow of this valley. Nothing happened here without his notice. As they descended the rocky slope, fragments of ash danced past them on the wind. Emma tried to catch one, her small fingers closing around nothing. "It's like snow, Papa, but warm. Warm snow. If only innocence could last forever." The nun spun at the sound of approaching hoofbeats, her eyes wide with the particular terror of someone caught in an act they can't explain. She was younger than Jacob had expected, maybe 25, with the kind of pale beauty that spoke of sheltered years and careful living. The kind of woman who'd never known the weight of a rifle or the ache of working dawn to dusk. "Sister." Jacob touched the brim of his hat, keeping his voice gentle. Emma's presence behind him seemed to calm the stranger slightly. What harm could a man with a child truly mean? I was just," she stammered, glancing at the dying fireware. The last of the letters curled into ash. "I'm sorry. I didn't realize this was private land." "It's not." Jacob dismounted, lifting Emma down with practiced ease. "But you picked a good spot. Water's clean here, and the wind carries smoke away quick." He paused, studying her face. "Though, I'm wondering what needed burning so urgent it couldn't wait for proper kindling." The nun's hand flew to her throat, where a simple wooden cross hung against her black wool habit. Nothing of importance. Just old correspondence. Old correspondence. Jacob had heard enough careful words in his 32 years to know when someone was lying. But he also recognized the particular brand of fear she carried, the kind that came from running towards something unknown rather than away from something known. "I'm Jacob Thornfield," he said, extending his hand. "This is Emma. We run cattle, about 2 miles east." She hesitated before taking his hand. Her fingers were soft but cold, despite the warmth of the day. "Sister Mary Catherine. I'm traveling. Long way from anywhere out here for traveling, sister." Jacob's eyes moved to the scattered ash at her feet. In the dying firelight, he could make out fragments of words on the unburned corners. "My dearest daughter," and "your loving father, father." The words seemed to hang in the air between them like smoke. Emma, with the fearless curiosity of childhood, had wandered closer to the fire. "Sister, why do all your letters say Father on them? Are they from God?" The nun's face went white as fresh snow. "Emma, come away from there," Jacob said quickly, but it was too late. The child had already spotted something else in the ashes, a small, half-burned photograph. "Papa, look. There's a picture of a man in a fancy coat. He looks like Emma." Jacob's voice carried the authority of a man who'd learned to command respect from both cattle and men. His daughter fell silent, but the damage was done. Sister Mary Catherine was staring at the photo with the expression of someone watching their past burn away. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the crackling of dying embers and the distant lowing of cattle. Jacob found himself studying the nun's face, the way her eyes held shadows deeper than her years should allow, the way her hands shook despite her obvious efforts to control them. "Sister," he said finally, his voice gentler now, "Emma and I were heading back for supper. You're welcome to join us. It's no place for a woman alone out here, especially with night coming." She shook her head quickly. "I couldn't impose. I have obligations." "What obligations?" The question came out harder than he'd intended. "Begging your pardon, but you're in the middle of nowhere burning letters signed Father and looking like you've seen a ghost. That doesn't sound like convent business to me. For a moment, he thought she might tell him. Her lips parted, and something vulnerable flickered in her eyes. Then she straightened, pulling her habit closer around her shoulders. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Thornfield, but I must be going. There's a town. Sweetwater, I believe. I need to reach it before dark. Sweetwater's 15 miles southeast, Jacob said slowly. On foot, in the dark. He shook his head. Sister, I don't know what you're running from, but the crack of a rifle split the evening air. All three of them froze. Emma instinctively moved closer to her father, while Sister Mary Catherine's face went from pale to ash gray. Jacob's hand moved to the Colt at his hip, his eyes scanning the ridge they'd just descended. Get behind the rocks, he commanded quietly. Both of you. Now. But as they moved toward cover, Jacob caught sight of something that made his blood run cold. There, silhouetted against the dying light on the ridge above, sat three riders. And they were looking directly at the nun. Who exactly was Sister Mary Catherine running from? And why did the sight of those riders make her look like she'd rather face the devil himself? The riders didn't move. They sat their horses like statues carved from shadow, watching the small group huddled by the dying fire. Jacob's hand remained steady on his Colt, but his mind raced. Three men didn't ride 15 miles into empty country. By accident. Sister, he said quietly, not taking his eyes off the ridge. Those men looking for you. Her silence was answer enough. Emma pressed closer to her father's leg, sensing the shift in the air, the way prey animals scent a coming storm. Jacob had felt this particular electricity before, in the war, in the moments before everything went to hell. Papa, Emma's voice, was small, uncertain. It's all right, little bird. But it wasn't, and they all knew it. Jacob's mind cataloged their options. 3 riders above, open ground in most directions, and a woman who'd gone from trembling to stone still in the space of a heartbeat. Sister Mary Catherine stepped forward, her chin lifting with sudden resolve. Mr. Thornfield, take your daughter and ride away. This isn't your concern. Like hell it isn't. The words came out rougher than he'd intended. Anyone who brings armed men to my valley makes it my concern. Your valley. Despite their situation, something almost like a smile flickered across her face. You sound like a man who's forgotten he doesn't own the wind. Before Jacob could respond, one of the riders urged his horse down the slope. The man wore a long coat that had seen better days and a hat pulled low over his eyes. But there was something in his bearing, the way he held himself in the saddle, that spoke of authority. The kind of authority that came from money and the power to enforce it. Sister Catherine, the man called out, his voice carrying easily. Across the distance. You've led us quite a chase. She straightened, and Jacob saw something new in her posture. Not fear, but a kind of weary defiance. I have nothing to say to you, Mr. Hawthorne. Hawthorne. The name stirred something in Jacob's memory, but he couldn't place it. The man continued his approach, his companions remaining on the ridge like watchful vultures. Your father's worried. Sick, Hawthorne said, dismounting about 20 feet away. Running off like that, burning his letters. Not very Christian behavior, I'd say. My father. Sister Mary Catherine's voice carried a bitterness that sat strangely on her lips. Is that what we're calling him now? Jacob felt the pieces of a puzzle shifting in his mind, but none of them fit together yet. Emma tugged at his sleeve. Papa, why's the sister angry? Hush, little bird. Jacob's attention remained fixed on Hawthorne, who was studying him with calculating eyes. Mr. Thornfield, isn't it? Hawthorne said pleasantly. I know your reputation. Good man, from what I hear. War hero, devoted father. This doesn't concern you. That's the second time someone's told me that, Jacob replied. I'm starting to take it personal. Hawthorne chuckled, but there was no warmth in it. Sister Catherine, here has some family matters to settle. Nothing that requires outside interference. Family matters. Sister Mary Catherine's laugh was sharp as broken glass. Is that what you call it when a man claims his daughter for 20 years, then tries to sell her to the highest bidder? The words hit Jacob like a physical blow. He'd heard rumors, whispers in saloons about men who treated their daughters like livestock, but to hear it spoken so plainly. Emma's small hand found his, and he squeezed it gently. Now, Catherine, Hawthorne's voice remained steady, but Jacob caught the threat beneath it. You're overwrought. Your father only wants what's best for you. Mr. Aldrich is a fine man, wealthy, influential. The marriage would be. The marriage would be a lie. She turned to face Jacob fully, and he saw something burning in her eyes that had nothing to do with the dying fire. My name isn't Sister Mary Catherine. It's Catherine Aldrich Morrison. My father is Senator Morrison of Colorado, and I've been running from him for 3 days. The silence that followed was deeper than the valley itself. Jacob felt the weight of her confession, the trust she'd just placed in him. A senator's daughter, running from an arranged marriage, hiding behind a nun's habit. Catherine, Hawthorne said, his patience clearly wearing thin. You're being dramatic. The senator has been more than reasonable. The engagement to Mr. Aldrich, the engagement to a man 3 times my age who looks at me like I'm a prize horse. Catherine's voice rose, and Jacob heard 20 years of suppressed anger in it. A man who's already buried 2 wives and needs a third to tend his children and warm his bed. Emma's eyes went wide, and Jacob realized she was hearing things no child should. But before he could speak, Catherine continued. I found the letters, Mr. Hawthorne. All of them. The ones where my father discussed my qualities like I was cattle. The ones where he negotiated my price. $20,000, wasn't it? Plus mineral rights to the land in Clear Creek? Hawthorne's hand moved toward his hip, but Jacob was already there, his Colt drawn and steady. I wouldn't. You're making a mistake, Thornfield, Hawthorne said, but his hand stilled. The senator is a powerful man. He has long reach. Maybe. Jacob's voice was deadly quiet, but his reach doesn't extend to my trigger finger. Catherine moved closer to Jacob, and he caught the scent of her. Not the expected smell of convent soap, but something wilder, like prairie grass and wood smoke. The letters I burned, she said quietly. They weren't from God. They were from my father. 20 years of them. Letters telling me how proud he was of his little angel, how blessed I was to have such a devoted father. Her voice cracked. I believed him. I believed every word. Catherine, Hawthorne began. I believed him right up until I found his correspondence with Mr. Aldrich. Until I read the letter where he laughed about how easy it had been to keep me pure and obedient by convincing me I had a religious calling. Tears ran down her cheeks now, but her voice remained steady. 20 years in that convent, praying for a father who saw me as merchandise. Jacob felt something cold and hard settle in his chest. He'd known evil men in the war, but this was different. This was a special kind of cruelty, the kind that came wrapped in love and duty. The senator just wants his daughter home, Hawthorne said, but his words sounded hollow now. The senator wants his investment protected, Catherine replied. But I'm not going back. Not to him. Not to Mr. Aldrich. Not to that cage he built around me. Hawthorne studied them both for a long moment. Then he smiled, and Jacob liked that. Smile even less than his threats. Very well, Hawthorne said, remounting his horse. But Catherine, you should know, your father anticipated this possibility. He's already contacted the territorial marshal. There's a warrant out for your arrest. On what charge? Jacob demanded. Theft, Hawthorne said pleasantly. Seems Sister Catherine here made off with some valuable religious artifacts from the convent. Artifacts that belonged to her father's donations. He tipped his hat mockingly. The marshal should be in Sweetwater by morning. As Hawthorne and his men disappeared into the gathering dusk, Jacob realized they weren't just running from a forced marriage. They were running from the law itself. The ride back to Jacob's ranch house passed in tense silence, broken only by the rhythmic creak of saddle leather and Emma's occasional questions about why the pretty lady was crying. Catherine rode behind Jacob, her arms wrapped around his waist with a desperation that spoke of someone clinging to the only solid thing in a world gone mad. The Thornfield Ranch sprawled across a natural valley, protected by pine-covered ridges. On 3 sides, Jacob had built it with his own hands after the war, every board and nail a promise to Emma that she'd never want for shelter. Now, as they approached the modest house with its wide porch and stone chimney, he wondered if he was about to lose it all. Papa, Emma said as they dismounted, is the pretty lady going to stay with us? Jacob glanced at Catherine, who stood beside the horse looking lost as a newborn calf. For tonight, little bird. We'll figure out tomorrow when it comes. Inside, the house held the comfortable warmth of a home built by loving hands. Catherine moved through it like a woman seeing such simple contentment for the first time. touching the rough-hewn table, running her fingers along the spines of books on the mantel, studying the crayon drawings Emma had tacked to the kitchen wall. "You built this yourself?" she said. It wasn't a question. Every inch. Jacob lit the oil lamps, chasing shadows into the corners. "Took me 2 years, working evenings and weekends." "Emma helped, didn't you, little bird?" Emma nodded importantly. "I held nails and told Papa stories so he wouldn't be lonely." Something flickered across Catherine's face. Envy, perhaps, or recognition of what she'd never had. "It's beautiful. It feels like home." "It is home," Jacob said simply. "Question is, what are we going to do about your situation?" Catherine sank into a chair at the kitchen table, her nun's habit pooling around her like spilled ink. "I don't know. I've never had to think beyond tomorrow before. The convent, it was all planned out. Prayer at dawn, lessons, meals, evening service. 20 years of the same routine. And before the convent, I was 7 when my father sent me there. I barely remember before." She looked up at him, and Jacob saw something that broke his heart, the bewilderment of a woman who'd never been allowed to choose her own path. "He told me my mother died giving birth to me, that I was too delicate for the world, too pure, that God had chosen me for a special purpose." Jacob busied himself making coffee, giving his hands something to do, while his mind processed her words. "But you left anyway. That takes courage. Or madness." Catherine's laugh held no humor. "I found the letters 3 days ago. I was cleaning out Father Superior's desk. He'd died the week before, and there they were. 20 years of correspondence. Between my father and the convent. Do you know what I learned, Mr. Thornfield?" Emma had wandered into the sitting room, distracted by her wooden blocks. Jacob was grateful for the privacy. "Tell me." "My mother didn't die in childbirth. She died trying to leave my father when I was 6. She fell from a horse while riding to the train station, a horse that had been drugged with laudanum." Catherine's voice remained steady, but her hands shook. "The letter was from my father to Father Superior, explaining why he needed to send me away for my own protection. He was afraid I'd inherited her rebellious nature." The coffee cup in Jacob's hands suddenly felt too heavy. "Jesus. There's more." Catherine stood, pacing to the window where she could see the last light fading from the sky. "My father isn't just a senator. He's been using his position to cover up activities. Land fraud, mineral claims, intimidation. The marriage to Mr. Aldrich isn't just about money. It's about Aldrich's silence. He knows about the murders. Murders? 3 men who tried to challenge my father's mining claims. They all died in accidents within a month of filing their complaints." Catherine turned back to face him. "Aldrich was the territorial judge who ruled in my father's favor each time. My father's been buying his silence for years, but Aldrich is getting greedy. He wants more than money now." Jacob felt the pieces clicking into place like the chambers of a revolver. "He wants the senator's daughter. Insurance that Morrison will keep protecting him. And if I refuse, both men have enough dirt on each other to destroy them both. But they'll take innocent people down with them." Catherine's voice cracked. "Don't. You see? I can't go back, but I can't keep running either. Too many people will suffer." The kitchen fell silent except for the ticking of the mantel clock and Emma's quiet humming from the next room. Jacob stared at Catherine, seeing her clearly. For the first time, not as a nun or a senator's daughter, but as a woman trapped between impossible choices. "There's something else," she said quietly. "The religious artifacts Hawthorne mentioned? They were real, but they weren't stolen." She reached into her habit and withdrew a small wooden box, ornately carved. "My father gave them to the convent. Years ago, gold chalices, silver crosses, things worth a fortune. But they came with a condition, that I never be allowed to leave." Jacob took the box, feeling its weight. "What's in here?" "Proof. Documents showing where the artifacts really came from. They weren't donations, they were payment for keeping me locked away. And there's something else." She opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside, nestled in faded velvet, was a small daguerreotype and a bundle of letters tied with blue ribbon. "My mother's letters," Catherine whispered. "The ones she wrote to me before she died. The nuns kept them, thinking they were from my father. I found them with the other papers." Jacob picked up the photograph. It showed a young woman with Catherine's eyes and a smile that spoke of wild joy. She was holding a baby, Catherine herself, and both were laughing. "She was beautiful," he said softly. "She was free." Catherine's voice held wonder. as if she were discovering the concept for the first time. Look at her face. She's not afraid, not trapped. She's holding her daughter and laughing like the world is full of possibilities. Jacob studied the photograph, then looked at Catherine. For a moment, he saw past the nun's habit to the woman beneath, saw the echo of her mother's wild joy struggling to break free. What did her letters say? That she loved me, that she was coming to get me, that we were going to live by the ocean where I could run barefoot and collect shells. Tears ran down Catherine's cheeks. She was murdered before she could save me, and I spent 20 years believing she'd abandon me to God's will. Emma appeared in the doorway, clutching her favorite doll. Papa, why is the pretty lady sad? Because sometimes grown-ups have to make hard choices, little bird. Emma approached Catherine with the fearless compassion of childhood. When I'm sad, Papa sings to me. Do you want me to sing to you? Catherine knelt to Emma's level, and Jacob saw something transform in her face. The ice breaking, the wall cracking. I'd like that very much. As Emma's sweet voice filled the kitchen with a simple lullaby, Jacob realized with startling clarity that everything had changed. Not just the danger outside, but something deeper. Looking at Catherine kneeling beside his daughter, he saw not a burden or a complication, but a possibility he'd never dared imagine. But in the distance, the sound of approaching horses shattered the moment, and this time, there were more than 3 riders heading toward the ranch. The thunder of hoofbeats grew louder, and Jacob counted at least 6 horses, maybe more. He moved to the window, peering through the curtains into the darkness beyond the porch light. Torches flickered like angry stars across the valley floor, moving in formation toward the house. Emma, go to your room, he commanded, his voice carrying the authority she'd learned never to question. Get under the bed and stay there until I come for you. But Papa, now little bird. Catherine stood frozen in the center of the kitchen, her mother's photograph clutched in her hands. It's my father, isn't it? He's come for me. Jacob checked. His rifle, the familiar weight of it grounding him in the moment. Maybe, but he'll have to go through me first. You don't understand. Catherine's voice carried 20 years of controlled terror. My father doesn't just take what he wants. He destroys everything around it. Your daughter, your home, your life. None of it matters to him. Then he doesn't know me very well. Jacob moved to the gun cabinet, pulling out a shotgun and a box of shells. Can you shoot? Catherine stared at the weapon. I've never. The convent didn't exactly. Point and pull the trigger. That's all you need to know right now. He pressed the shotgun into her hands, noting how she held it like it might bite her. Stay behind me, no matter what happens. The riders had reached the yard now, their torches casting dancing shadows across the porch. Jacob could make out at least 8 men, all armed, all wearing the hard expressions of men paid to do violence. At their head rode a figure that commanded attention even in the darkness, tall, silver-haired, with the bearing of a man accustomed to being obeyed. Catherine. The voice boomed across the night air, cultured and confident. I know you're in there, daughter. Come out, and no one needs to get hurt. Senator Morrison. Jacob had seen his type before, men who spoke of duty and honor while their hands dripped with blood. He'd fought beside them in the war, taken orders from them, and learned to recognize the particular evil that hid behind respectability. I'm not coming out, Father. Catherine's voice rang, clear despite her trembling. I know what you are. I know what you did to Mother. A long silence followed, broken only by the restless stamping of horses and the creak of saddle leather. When Morrison spoke again, his voice had lost its paternal warmth. Mr. Thornfield, I presume? I'm Senator Morrison. You're harboring a disturbed young woman who's stolen valuable property from the church. I'm offering you one chance to step aside and let me collect what's mine. Jacob stepped onto the porch, his rifle held casually but ready. Property, Senator? That how you talk about your daughter? My daughter is unwell, Mr. Thornfield. 20 years of convent life has filled her head with fantasies. She needs proper care, proper guidance. The kind only a husband can provide. You mean the kind Aldrich provides to his wives before they die mysteriously. Jacob's voice carried across the yard with deadly clarity. We know about the murders, Morrison. We know about the land fraud. We know about it all. Morrison's composure cracked slightly. You're making a serious mistake, rancher. I have friends in very high places. The territorial marshal is already On his way with a warrant for my daughter's arrest. Then we'll wait for him together. Jacob's thumb found the hammer of his rifle. But you're not taking her tonight. Papa. Emma's scream from inside the house sent ice through Jacob's veins. He spun toward the door, but it was too late. Two men emerged from the shadows of the back porch, one holding his struggling daughter, the other pressing a knife to her throat. You should have checked your back door, Thornfield, Morrison said, pleasantly. Now, shall we discuss this like reasonable men? The world narrowed to the blade against Emma's neck, the terror in her eyes, the way she reached for him with small hands that couldn't quite bridge the distance. Jacob felt something primal and dangerous uncurl in his chest, the same cold rage that had carried him through the war's worst moments. Let her go. His voice was barely human. She's just a child. She's leverage, Morrison replied. Catherine, step out here. Now, or the little girl pays for your stubbornness. Catherine appeared in the doorway, her face pale but determined. Don't hurt her. Please. She's innocent in all this. Innocence. Morrison's laugh was bitter. You always were. Sentimental, just like your mother. It's a weakness, Catherine. One that needs to be corrected. My mother wasn't weak. Catherine stepped fully onto the porch, the shotgun still in her hands. She was brave enough to try to save me. Brave enough to leave you. Your mother was a fool who died for her defiance. Just as this child will die if you don't come with me peacefully. Jacob watched the knife at Emma's throat, calculating distances and angles. The man holding her was nervous, sweating despite the cool night air. Nervous men made mistakes. But not before they could hurt a 5-year-old girl. All right, Catherine said quietly. I'll come with you. But let the child go first. Catherine, no. Jacob began. I said I'll come. Her voice cracked like a whip. But I have conditions. Morrison raised an eyebrow. You're hardly in a position to make demands, daughter. I have the documents. Catherine held up the wooden box. All of them. The proof of what you've done, the evidence of the murders, the truth about the mineral claims. You want me to disappear quietly? Fine. But if anything happens to Mr. Thornfield or his daughter, those documents go straight to the territorial governor. You're bluffing. Am I? Catherine opened the box, revealing the papers inside. Josiah Brennan, shot in the back while surveying his claim. Thomas Wickham, found dead in his hotel room with laudanum in his system. Daniel Cortez, killed in a mining accident 3 days after filing his complaint. All of them challenging your fraudulent claims. All of them dead. Within a month. Jacob saw something flicker in Morrison's eyes. Not fear, but calculation. The senator was weighing his options, trying to decide how much truth his daughter actually possessed. Even if you have proof, Morrison said slowly, who's going to believe the word of a hysterical woman against a United States senator? The same people who believed it when you had my mother killed. Catherine's voice carried a strength Jacob had never heard before. I found her last letter, Father. The one she wrote the night before she died. She knew you were watching her. Knew you'd try to stop her. So she hid copies of everything. The financial records, the correspondence with Aldrich, the witness statements. She was going to expose you. My mother was a hero. Catherine stepped closer to the porch railing, and Jacob saw her true purpose. She was positioning herself between Morrison and Emma. And you killed her for it. But you made one mistake, Father. You let me live. You let me grow up. And now I'm going to finish what she started. Morrison's mask finally slipped completely. You ungrateful little. The knife moved away from Emma's throat for just an instant as the man holding her shifted his grip. It was all Jacob needed. His rifle cracked, and the man dropped like a stone, Emma rolling free and running toward the house. Chaos erupted in the yard. Morrison's men reached for their weapons, but Catherine was already moving, the shotgun in her hands roaring to life. Jacob threw himself off the porch, tackling 2 riders as they tried to flank the house, eyeing the swirling dust and gunfire. Jacob realized this wasn't just about saving Catherine anymore. It was about choosing what kind of man he wanted to be. What kind of father, what kind of future they could build from the ashes of the past. The gunfight lasted less than 3 minutes, but it carved itself into memory like lightning burns into wood. When the smoke cleared and the last echo faded across the valley, 4 of Morrison's men lay still in the dirt. The others had fled into the darkness, their loyalty bought with coins that couldn't purchase courage. Senator Morrison himself knelt. In the yard, blood seeping from a shoulder wound, his silver hair disheveled, and his politician's composure finally, utterly shattered. Catherine stood over him, the smoking shotgun in her hands, her nun's habit torn and stained, but her spine straight as a pine. "It's over, Father," she said quietly. 20 years of lies, 20 years of fear, it's finished. Jacob emerged from behind the water trough where he'd taken cover, Emma clinging to his neck like a frightened kitten. His daughter was unharmed except for the terror in her eyes, but Jacob knew that would fade with time and love. Some wounds healed clean when tended properly. "Papa," Emma whispered against his ear, "is the bad man going to hurt us anymore?" "No, little bird. The bad man can't hurt anyone anymore." Morrison laughed, a bitter sound that held no humor. "You think this is over? You think killing a few hired guns changes anything? I'm a United States Senator. I have friends, influence, power you can't even comprehend." "You had power," Catherine corrected. "But power built on murder and lies has a way of crumbling when the truth comes to light." She moved to Jacob's side, her free hand finding his arm, with a touch that steadied them both. "The territorial marshal you mentioned? He's not coming to arrest me. I sent him copies of all the evidence 3 days ago, along with a letter explaining everything. He should be in Denver by now, presenting it all to the territorial governor." Morrison's face went ashen. "You couldn't have, you didn't know. I've known for longer than you think." Catherine's voice carried the quiet strength of someone who'd found their true self at last. "Did you really believe I spent 20 years in that convent just praying and sewing? I learned to read people, Father. I learned to listen to conversations. You thought I couldn't hear. I learned that knowledge is the only real power anyone ever has." The sound of approaching horses made them all tense, but these riders carried lanterns instead of torches, and their approach was measured rather than aggressive. Jacob recognized Deputy Marshal Tom Brennan, Josiah's younger brother, the one who'd escaped Morrison's reach by working in a different territory. "Looks like the cavalry's arrived," Jacob said dryly. As the deputy and his men took Morrison into custody, Catherine finally set down the shotgun and sank onto the porch steps. The strength that had carried her through the confrontation seemed to drain away all at once, leaving her looking fragile and young in the lamplight. Jacob sat beside her, Emma between them, and for a moment they simply breathed in the silence of a world where they were finally safe. "What happens now?" Catherine asked quietly. "Now you get to choose," Jacob said. "For the first time in your life, you get to decide what comes next." She looked at him, then at Emma, who had fallen asleep against her father's chest. "I don't know how to choose. I've never been allowed to want anything for myself. What did your mother want for you?" Catherine smiled, and it transformed her entire face. "To run barefoot by the ocean. To collect shells and laugh without permission. To be free." "The ocean's a long way from here," Jacob said carefully. "But there's a creek that runs through the south pasture. Emma loves to splash in it come summer. And there's plenty of room to run." Hope flickered in her eyes like a candle flame. "Are you asking me to stay?" "I'm asking if you want to. No obligations, no pressure. Just, if you want to see what it feels like to build something of your own, with people who care about you." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "Emma's been without a mother for 3 years. I've been without someone to share. The load, the dreams, the possibilities." Catherine reached out tentatively and touched Emma's sleeping face. The child stirred and smiled without waking, as if recognizing the gentle touch of someone who understood the value of protection and love. "I'd like that," Catherine whispered. "I'd like to try." 3 months later, as autumn painted the valley in shades of gold and crimson, Catherine Morrison, no longer a senator's daughter, no longer a nun, just a woman who'd chosen her own name and her own path, stood in the kitchen she'd helped expand, watching Jacob teach Emma to whittle on the front porch. The letters from Denver had been favorable. Senator Morrison would spend the rest of his life in territorial prison. Judge Aldrich had fled to Mexico rather than face trial. The stolen mineral claims had been returned to their rightful owners, including a substantial piece that the territorial government had awarded to Catherine as compensation for her testimony. She wore a simple blue dress now instead of black wool, and her hair caught the light like spun copper. The wooden box that had once held her mother's letters now contained new correspondence. Letters from Emma's teacher praising the child's progress, a deed to the expanded ranch property, and a small velvet pouch that Jacob had given her the week before. Inside the pouch was a simple gold ring and a promise that she could take all the time she needed to decide if she wanted to accept it. No pressure, no obligations, just an open door to whatever future they might build together. Yes, she watched father and daughter laughing together on the porch. Catherine felt something bloom in her chest that she'd never experienced before. The absolute certainty that she was exactly where she belonged. The silence of the convent had been replaced by the sounds of a living home. Emma's laughter, Jacob's patient voice, the creak of rocking chairs, and the whisper of wind through tall grass. She touched the ring through the velvet pouch and smiled. Tomorrow, she thought. Tomorrow she would give him her answer. But tonight, she would simply stand in her kitchen, and listen to the sound of a family being born from the ashes of the past. Outside, Emma squealed with delight as her wooden figure finally took the shape of a horse. Jacob caught Catherine's eye through the window and smiled, and she felt her heart answer with a joy as wild and free as her mother's laughter in that faded photograph. Some stories, she realized, were worth the wait. Well, partners, if that tale of courage, love, and second chances warmed your heart like a campfire on a cold night. Don't forget to tip your hat with a like and share your thoughts in the comments below. Your words mean more than gold dust to this old storyteller. And speaking of sharing, drop a comment and let us know where in this wide world you're listening from today. Are you watching from the rolling plains of Texas, the mountains of Colorado, or perhaps somewhere far from these dusty trails? We'd be mighty pleased to hear from you.